Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. Welcome to the month of December. This is the last month in the current decade. Hard to believe that the 2010s are almost over. Today is the Book of the Month episode. On the first day of each month, we review the Book of the Month. In order to be considered for Book of the Month, a book has to meet a very simple criteria. It has to be impactful enough that it'll change your life or your perspective on the world. Now, whether it does or not, of course, is entirely up to you. You might read the book and comment on what a great book it was, but if you don't internalize the book and make it part of you, you're missing the point. The author of this month's book is none other than Malcolm Gladwell. He's written several other groundbreaking books, including Outliers, Blink, David and Goliath, The Tipping Point, and What the Dog Saw. Each one of these books made it to New York Times bestseller status. And each of these books would have easily met the Book of the Month criteria as well. Malcolm Gladwell is also the host of the Revisionist History Podcast, in which he goes back through history and looks at something that happened and examines underneath the covers. At heart, Malcolm Gladwell is a journalist. He's a Canadian from Toronto, currently living in New York City, where he writes for the New Yorker magazine. Our book this month is called Talking with Strangers. Like his previous books, Gladwell takes real-life stories and tries to dig beneath the covers to find insights, to find common threads of new learnings, and to illuminate the blind spots that are hidden in plain sight. The premise of the book is that communication happens easily with people with whom we're familiar and whom we understand. The author's examples are diverse. The book is framed around the story of a woman from Chicago who moved to a small town in West Texas to restart her life in a new setting. She secured a new job and on her first day in town was stopped by a police officer for a questionable traffic stop. The sequence of events that unfolded found this innocent woman being dragged from her car, handcuffed, and brought into custody, and eventually dead 3 days later in a jail cell, never having committed a crime of any sort. The author looks at how we process communication. A case study of the TV sitcom Friends shows that viewers of the show were able to follow the storyline of the show with the audio completely turned off simply by watching the body language and facial expressions of the actors on the show. The accuracy of the interpretation was incredibly high. It shows that many of us rely upon these cues for far more than we know. But this is a TV show, and the actors are paid to do a great job of acting. If they didn't do a good job of showing happiness, sadness, anger, excitement, well, they wouldn't be actors for very long. In the real world, a smile isn't always a signal of happiness. There are those people who make up a small percentage of the population who have learned to disconnect their emotions from their body language. Some go on to be criminal masterminds like Bernie Madoff. Others go on to become championship poker players. Talking with strangers is really about how we observe, filter, and process the inputs that are coming at us. It's about how the failure to understand what in front of us creates an increasingly polarized world. It pits French versus English, black versus white, Jews versus Muslims. Talking to strangers is a classically Gladwellian intellectual adventure, a challenging and controversial excursion through history, psychology, and scandals taken straight out of the news. He revisits the deceptions of Bernie Madoff, the trial of Amanda Knox, the suicide of Sylvia Plath, the scandal at Penn State University of pedophile Jerry Sandusky, and the death of Sandra Bland, throwing our understanding of these and other stories into doubt. It's full of case studies that individually could lead you astray, but taken together, they reframe the way in which you're going to look at the interactions. Malcolm Gladwell isn't shy about confronting difficult topics. He chronicles the case study of the negotiations between Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain of the UK and Adolf Hitler in 1938. Chamberlain's negotiations with Hitler are widely regarded as one of the great follies of the Second World War. Chamberlain fell under Hitler's spell. He was outmaneuvered at the bargaining table, and he misread Hitler's intentions. In the book, Gladwell argues that something is very wrong with the tools and strategies we use to make sense of people we don't know. And because we don't know how to talk to strangers, we're inviting conflict and misunderstanding in ways that have a profound effect on our lives and in our world. Nowhere is this more evident in the Republican versus Democrat polarization in the U.S., the liberal versus conservatives in Canada, in the UK, in France, in Italy, and on and on. The idea of the Book of the Month is to change your life or change the way you see the world. Talking with Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell will definitely deliver on both those promises. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.